everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So here's my review for episode 2. So obviously this will contain spoilers for the episode. Really phenomenal episode. Honestly, a big improvement from the first episode. And I do think a lot of it was because they actually got into some of the storyline from France. They really set up the story really well. And a lot of stuff that I thought was happening in episode 2, I guess is not happening until episode 3 based off of the trailer for that episode. And so yeah, stay tuned for my trailer breakdown. I'll be coming out in about a couple hours from now. And then obviously tonight I will do a couple videos on episode 2. Talking about some of the big moments that happened here in this episode because yeah, they really did, or they went all out and sort of confirmed a couple of things here. So yeah, a lot to talk about here. So before any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. Now, the opening monologue in the very beginning of the episode I thought was actually really perfect now looking back at the episode overall, because Laurent is actually speaking here, and so he's saying that he wants everybody to be happy and he just hopes that the nest feels like home one day. And so that I thought was really interesting because Isabel and Laurent, like, they've been sort of, you know, wanting to make it to the nest. And I guess this prophecy of Laurent being the cure has been a thing since like literally forever now. And Lo Sang, I don't know if he's the one who created it. They sort of hinted at that anyways in this episode here, but it really seems like this is something that has been building for quite some time now. And Laurent doesn't know how he feels about the whole thing. Isabel doesn't know how she feels about the whole thing here. She seems very unsure. And by the end of the episode, seems like she wants to go with Daryl back to America. So this episode was really big, I would say, for Isabel and Laurent in terms of, you know, really figuring out what is home exactly, even though, you know, I guess what's happening with Laurent right now is sort of, we don't really know, but it seems like in episode 3 they are going to be getting into, you know, some places there. And I'm really excited, honestly, and I do have some predictions for episode 3 in terms of how that ceremony is going to go, so stay tuned for that. The bell rings and we do see Daryl arrive home and Laurent's very happy. Sylvie is very happy that Emile is okay as well. And honestly, the focus on Sylvie here makes a lot of sense just based off of the ending there. And I am very concerned about Sylvie just because of that ending. Like, that ending there ended in such a way where, I don't know, there's a shot in the trailer that seems to kind of hint at something. And yeah, I'll talk about that more in my episode 3 trailer breakdown. But Daryl, you know, in the very beginning here just seems very happy. And they do just seem like a very happy family. Like, Daryl, Isabel, and Laurent seem so happy together. And like, honestly, I do think that Isabel's going to die at some point, you know, this season. And I mean, it's probably going to be either maybe a finale thing or maybe episode 4, just because I've heard, based off a lot of the early reviewers, you know, when the early reviews came out a couple weeks ago, that episodes 4 and 6 are very emotional. So I'm just like, well, something around there, I guess, is happening. And so maybe Isabel dies in 4 and then there's some sort of reaction afterwards, or she dies in 6. That's my prediction, just because I don't know where this is going overall, but I just really feel like Isabel, after this episode anyways, they're really making everything seem so positive. And Daryl and Isabel and Laurent, like, they just seem like a happy family. It's so perfect. You know, it feels right for Daryl as well. Like, this feels like this is actually Daryl's family here. And so, you know, them playing baseball and whatnot, that was just really incredible just to see a lot of those scenes. And again, because this is The Walking Dead, whenever I see scenes like that and whenever I have a suspicion that a character is going to die, scenes like this just tell me immediately, okay, so this character is probably going to die. Because I don't see Laurent dying. I mean, potentially because of the Cure storyline, right? Like, if you find out that he's not the Cure, I could see something like that happening. But this all right here is as amazing as it was to see, is really teasing the fact that I think Isabel's going to die later on this season. But I think for this episode, in terms of opening up, you know, the story this way, I think it was really incredible. And honestly, when I look back at episode 1 in terms of what they did for Daryl's story, that really was just sort of, you know, a way to set up, I guess, this part of the story here. Because there wasn't a lot that happened in episode 1 for Daryl, but it really did connect a lot of what happened in the finale of season 1 with, I guess, the current storyline now for France, right? And I would say that, I mean, this episode here really felt like a continuation of the story from season 1. And so we do see Carol and Ash, and they actually arrive to Greenland. And honestly, that was really cool to see the Greenland walkers, to see the mountains and all of that. I mean, obviously, I think they shot that in France, but it was still really cool to see. Carol and Ash are saved by survivors on Greenland. I don't remember what their names were, but they went there, I guess, for climate research and whatnot. And I guess that was, you know, really early on in the apocalypse, and they were only supposed to be there for a few months, but obviously turned into like, what, 10 to 15 years or however long it's been. So yeah, you know, one of the survivors mentioned that she sort of views the apocalypse as a way of the earth healing itself, right? And then you have Ash, who is like doubting that Sophia is even alive, which is just, you know, insane just to hear him say that. I mean, you know, there's all this stuff happening, all this conflict, you know, this episode, but that one lie just kind of keeps coming up here and there. And Carol, you know, I think she handled it really well overall, but yeah, you know, it's still there. Like, the fact that she told that lie, like, it's still there. But these two survivors in Greenland that we come across, I really felt like there was something off immediately. immediately, and you do get these like really creepy vibes from them. And so I was kind of, immediately when they went there, I was concerned. Like, there's something off here, because I know that eventually Carol's gonna get to France, and so she's gonna get there with Ash's help, right? So Ash is somehow gonna get to France as well, because how is Carol gonna get to France, right? So I knew that Carol and Ash were gonna be fine, and so at some point something was gonna happen here. And then yes, it's revealed that I guess they wanted to kill Carol, and then I guess they wanted to keep Ash alive, and so Carol is now in a standoff with one of the survivors, and you can tell that she didn't want to do it, obviously. Like, she definitely was more told to do this, and Carol, like, she recognizes that right away. And luckily, because it was a crossbow, that when she takes out her friend, it's not like she can really load up the weapon right away. Ash actually kills one of the survivors, which I knew something was going to happen, because if you look at the trailers and stuff like that for this season, you do see that one shot where one of the survivors is actually taken out by something, and I guess it was a flare gun, right? And so yeah, that makes sense, but I knew that was happening. As soon as I saw her and Carol walking up to the plane, I was like, okay, she's about to die here. And then I actually kind of felt bad for her, because it didn't really seem like, like she was sort of convinced to do all these things because I guess of her friend, right? And so she actually had a chance here at like a new start, but I think Ash was just like, well, no, she was going to kill you, this and that. And I think Carol knew better, and that's what's kind of funny about the situation, is that Carol knew better because she knew who that person was. Ash didn't know. Like, Ash didn't have a conversation with her, really. And so after Ash takes her out, I mean, Carol, she kind of feels bad for a second, because she's like, oh wow, like she was actually kind of a good person that was like told to do these things, and but she doesn't say anything to Ash because she doesn't want to make Ash feel bad, right? So yeah, just kind of a crazy situation. Honestly, this whole storyline here I actually really liked, because to get Carol to France, you do want it to be, some effort. Like, you do want to show that it's a journey, that she's not getting there. Like, again, there was a lot of predictions earlier on. I made some predictions earlier on that at the end of episode 1 we would see her arrive in France, because I think that it just makes sense in terms of filming and the storyline and all that. But working out the story in the way that they did here, like episode 1 ends with them leaving to France, and then we get the storyline here in episode 2, and just the way the episode plays out overall, like the pacing is really well done. And then you see Carol actually arrive to France at the end of the episode, but we'll talk about that in a second. The big storyline happening at the nest, and I guess really the big storyline for the episode, is that Laurent goes missing. And so something seems very off, I will say, in terms of when they're going to go look for him. I felt like something was off, because I thought that he was going to go missing because of something related to Losang, and obviously we do learn that, but the way that the story plays out in this episode, I didn't think that Losang didn't know about it at all. And so when Daryl goes out, I was like, okay, this seems really off, because no one else would take Laurent at this point here, so I knew that something was up here. I will say the shots of the vehicles outside, and you see all the leaves on the ground and whatnot, this looks a lot like The Walking Dead season 4, like just around that timeline there. Like, honestly, when I saw that was really incredible. Also, Daryl looking around and sort of tracking people, like that was something that happened a lot back in the day, and they really haven't, in quite some time now anyways, I guess had Daryl do things like that in terms of tracking people and all of that, because he's like, yeah, 2, maybe 3 people went this way. So just very cool to see that Daryl still has, his tracking skills and all that. And as this is all happening, we have Sylvie looking around because she thinks something's off, and she notices that there's this meal being made for somebody, and so she's like, this is really off. She's wondering who, and so she, she follows that person to that one place. Daryl and Isabel and Falou eventually arrive to, I guess, a mill, like a windmill, and that's where everyone turns on Daryl. And I sort of, again, I as they were going to this place, I really knew that something was off because of what was happening with Sylvie. Like, just, it seemed like the nest, I guess it's because I also follow a lot of the behind the scenes stuff as well. Like, I don't mean filming or anything like that. I just mean like in terms of the trailers and a lot of the interviews and all that. So I knew that the nest, would be sort of seen as like a villain at some point this season. So I was just thinking that like it was going to happen at some point here. And so yeah, everybody turns on Daryl. So really cool scenes there. I actually thought Falou was going to die there. And, but yeah, thankfully he didn't die. And Emil, he's actually with the nest here. And so I was shocked by that. Honestly, I thought that he was overall a good person, but I guess because he believed in what the nest, really believes in terms of Laurent being the cure, that the nest convinced all of them that Daryl was actually going to be an issue in all of this here. And so I guess we learn what the nest wants to do, and that is, they want to see if Laurent is going to turn to a walker. And so it's kind of interesting, and I will do a video talking about this later on, and that seems to be what the story is going to be here, going into episode 3, is that we're really going to find out whether or not, I guess, Laurent is the cure, because everybody seems to believe that. And it's funny because that was a big, talking point for season 1 for a lot of us was, is Laurent the cure, because he was born from a walker, this and that. And so they're actually still sort of doing that storyline right now. So that it's really cool because they're actually showing showing us that there's a lot of people that believe that he actually is the cure, right? And so as crazy as it seemed in season 1, I think now a lot of us are more in the mindset of, no, he's not the cure, but people still believe that he is, and so they're actually going to test out whether or not he is, right? And to see if he's going to turn to a walker. And it's funny because Lo Sang says in the episode later on that he really believes that he's not going to turn, right? And so I wonder if it seemed like that would play out, where maybe Laurent gets a walker bite and then he doesn't turn. I don't think so. I do think Daryl and Isabel are likely going to stop it now. And now that I'm thinking about a lot of the scenes where a lot of stuff is happening at the nest in terms of that ceremony, I think that Daryl and Isabel go there and they stop all of that. And so, yeah, but the whole reveal of all of this here, like, this is classic Walking Dead. Just honestly really incredible stuff. This episode was just really great. But then we see Carol and Ash arrive to France, and Ash wants to help Carol, I guess, find Sophia, but Carol's like, no, I want you to stay here. And she leaves the crossbow with Ash, which I found really interesting because I know there's a lot of shots of Daryl with his crossbow. So at some point, we're going to have Daryl, I guess, eventually, get back to the plane and get his crossbow back, right? So I'm guessing that's going to happen before the finale. I don't know at what point, but around episode 4 or 5, I'm sort of assuming. And so, yeah, Carol, I guess, goes to France. And so the music, happening as Carol's traveling into France, and just everything here in terms of the cinematography and everything here. Honestly, this is one of the best episodes I've watched in a very long time. And we do see Carol run into Pouvoir. And so I thought that was really cool. And the one thing that I really liked about this episode here, and what I really liked about The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, just sort of in general, from season 1 to season 2, is really the attention to detail in terms of survival and a lot of, I guess, these characters' skills in the apocalypse here, because Carol literally makes a hole in that bag. And so I was like, oh, that's so good, because now she can track the vehicle, right? And also just having Daryl being able to track people in general too, I was like, okay, they really focused on that aspect of the characters, right? So that was really cool. But yeah, Carol eventually, she ends up getting captured by Pouvoir, and then we learn that Madame Genet wants 20 people. I really feel like this has to do with Walker experiments, because I don't know why they're just taking 20 people. I guess eventually it was 19 people, but yeah, there's something off there. Like, I don't think they're just allowing people to live in certain places here. I really feel that this has to do with, the Walker research for super walkers. And so also Lo Sang didn't know of the plan overall. And I will say he actually kind of seems like a good person overall, because he's actually very upset about the fact that, I don't know what that woman's name was, but it's the mysterious character. And I would say overall, I don't think she's too mysterious. Like, I don't know where the story's going to go eventually, but I do think that she is just really believing in the fact that Laurent is the cure to all of this here. So I really think that's probably all it is in terms of who that character is. But yeah, she's the one that actually took Laurent and came up with this whole plan for Daryl and Isabel, right? And so I guess Isabel being involved in whatnot, that was sort of, she didn't want that, but yeah, that's sort of what Lo Sang was upset about. And also, he really does believe as well that Laurent is the cure, and that's really concerning. So as much as I do say that he is a good person, because he actually really believes that has me concerned about, I guess, the future here. And I do think that he's going to be a villain here, honestly. And again, the episode ends here where, well, actually, there's a couple of things here, but Daryl and Isabel, they want to go back to America, or at least Isabel tells Daryl, like, I want to go back to America with you, basically. And like, me, you, and Laurent, we can go back there. It ends in such a positive way where I'm just like, you know what? I think that they're really not going to be able to get away here, because again, like, all the happiness stuff that we got in the very beginning of the episode just really kind of told me that, like, they're not going to get away here. There's going to be something that happens here with the nest. And it really is unfortunate in terms of, the Walking Dead stories and whatnot, because you almost want a happy ending sometimes for the characters, but it is just going to be, what it is. And so, yeah, we do see Carol, though. She arrives to Madame Genet's base. I was not expecting all of that. And based off of the trailer, we actually see that Cadron is there. And so, yeah, Carol and Cadron, they're going to have a bunch of scenes together here in episode 3. And Carol's going to learn about where Daryl is. And obviously, Cadron knows where, I guess, the nest is, right? So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of reveals in episode 3. I'm so excited for next week's episode. But, yeah, I really thought this episode here was actually really incredible. Again, I think for Carol's storyline, it wasn't the biggest part of the episode, but they focused on it and also just sort of gave it, the appropriate amount of screen time, I would say, for this episode here. Because I think a lot of people's concerns after watching the very first episode was, we need to somehow make the France storyline more exciting, or not more exciting, but we just need to focus on it, because after the first episode, the story really was, okay, Carol's going to France, but what's happening from, when Daryl escaped from Madame Genet's base, like, now he's going back to the nest, like, what's happening with everything? There wasn't really that much of a focus in the first episode on all of that, but I think in this episode here, they really set up the story so well. And based off the trailer for episode 3, I do think that Daryl and Isabel, as soon as the water, I guess, goes away or whatever, they're going to be able to, I guess, get across and go to the nest. And then I do think that during the ceremony that they're actually going to probably, I guess, save Laurent, because there's a lot of shots in just like previous trailers where you do see Isabel and Laurent together. And so it's likely going to happen. But, you know, Daryl at one point, I know based off of, again, a previous trailer, that he does get captured. So I think that as much as they are going to do whatever they're going to do, they're likely going to be captured, and then I think maybe that's how they're given to Madame Genet, which would be kind of messed up if the nest actually did that. Like, they gave Daryl and Isabel to Madame Genet. I don't know what that means for Laurent. Like, that's sort of my concern there, is like, well, what's going to happen with Laurent at that point? But that's sort of my predictions right now going into episode 3. But again, there's a trailer. I'll break down everything shot for shot, talk about everything there. But for episode 2, just a really great episode. So yeah, I'm going to leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.